CBS Radio is marking its 50th anniversary. The network is marking the event this evening with a special 3-hour broadcast narrated by Walter Cronkite. Stand by for the segments of this broadcast recorded between 7 to 10 p.m. on the evening of Sunday, September 18th, 1977.
One of the best sounds of all on old-time radio is the sound of an audience laughing, being entertained. Jack Benny once described radio as a less confining medium than television.
Instead of a big, ugly glass picture tube, you saw the performers in your own mind. You painted your own big-as-life version of each moment with that loving, creative brush we call imagination.
For those who remember old-time radio, and equally for those who don't, we're on an odyssey back to those days to listen again to some of the sounds on CBS radio over the last 50 years. Sounds that entertain.
And now Bill Schallert for General Electric.
Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. The words in that nursery rhyme I just read were the first spoken words ever to be recorded. A recording made by Thomas Edison, one of the founders of the General Electric Company. And with that recording, the phonograph was born in 1877 at Menlo Park, New Jersey. Edison had a staff working for him then, the insomnia squad he called them. They would work around the clock, stopping just long enough to grab a bite to eat or take a short nap. One of the members of this squad was a brilliant craftsman named John Cruzy. Edison had given him a rough sketch showing a cylinder on a rod with a hand crank. Positioned over the cylinder was something that looked like a cactus needle. Edison asked Cruzy if he could build it. He said, "Sure, what is it?" "It's a phonograph," Edison said. "What's it supposed to do?" Edison said it would record the human voice and play it back. The response to that was laughter. But the laughter turned to amazement after Edison demonstrated his new invention by recording and playing back the little nursery rhyme. The start of the phonograph was the start of something unique. For the first time in history, the average person could be entertained by famous and talented artists right in his own home. During this time, GE was working on the development of a broader field of entertainment for the home, radio. Soon, America was listening to comedy, drama, and news, in addition to music. And in the early 20s, GE was working on the biggest breakthrough of all, television. In 1928, General Electric made the very first television broadcast. It's been a long road getting from Mary Had a Little Lamb to Mary Tyler Moore, but it's been one paved with hours of enjoyment and a lot of progress. Progress for people. From General Electric.
Now, CBS News correspondent Walter Cronkite continues his report on entertainment. One part of today's CBS News 3-hour special, CBS Radio at 50, an autobiography in sound.
Old-time radio had spontaneity because it was a live medium in the early days. All the laughter you heard was real, and so were the fluffs and flubs. It was all part of radio. Among the biggest radio headliners who could make listeners laugh loud and long were Amos and Andy and Burns and Allen. George Burns and Gracie Allen started on the Columbia Network in the early 1930s and spent almost 20 years on radio, most of it on CBS. They made the transition to television and are still seen in late-night reruns.
You look worried, Gracie. What's the trouble?
I think too much, George. I'm afraid my brain will wear out.
Really? What do you think about?
Everything. Oh, I'm way ahead of other people. And look at that girl who married Cary Grant. Everybody says, what a smart girl.
Well?
I thought of marrying Cary Grant years ago.
You're thinking every minute.
I come from a family of thinkers. Big thinkers.
The biggest.
My brother Willie is famous for thinking on his feet.
Yes, huh?
Sure. When anyone asks him how much 2 and 2 are, he takes off his shoes and thinks on his feet. Yeah.
Amos and Andy went back and forth between CBS and NBC during their radio careers and went on to television, but only briefly. In later years, they were considered controversial by some. But in their heyday, Amos and Andy were the all in the family of their era. Here's a famous episode.
But now, don't get nervous, Andy. That's the main thing, you see.
Well, you'd get nervous, too, if you was in my place.
I know.
Oh, this is a big thing, Amos. Yeah.
I got the ring now, you know.
Yeah, don't lose that. Now, what does I got to do?
Well, you say I do twice. You say that twice.
Well, why is I got to say it twice?
Well, the preacher asks you two different questions, you see. Then you say, I do once, then he asks you another question. Then you say, I do again, you see.
Yeah. You're going to be standing there by me, ain't you?
Oh, yeah, I is your best man, son. Yeah, now don't get nervous, Andy. I know just how you feel, but take it easy.
My legs been acting like they've been made out of rubber.
Wait a minute.
Everything going all right now, Andy. Don't worry about nothing. Remember, I'm looking out for your interests.
Well, listen, Kingfish, why don't the thing start?
Yeah, well, You will now join hands. I, by virtue of authority vested in me by the state and this church, I now pronounce you...
Amos, I shot.
Hey, Andy, you hurt?
Amos, my arm, my right arm. Somebody done shot me in the arm.
Get a hold of him. Come on, we're going to take him out here.
Listeners argued for months. Did Andy really get married? Well, we're ahead of our story. The beginning of CBS Radio did not include such superstars as Burns and Allen and Amos and Andy. That was to come later. It all began, in fact, on this date, September 18th, in 1927. A fledgling network of 16 stations went on the air for the first time, with a total of 10 hours to be programmed each week, most of it music and entertainment. The next year, 1928, a young man named William S. Paley came to New York from Philadelphia to run the new company with two thoughts in mind: to provide the best entertainment, news, and sports money could buy, and to make Columbia the #1 network in the country. In time, he achieved both aims. By 1935, 8 years after the network's debut, it had grown from 16 affiliates to 97. Its profits that year, after taxes, were almost $3 million, and CBS was beginning to catch up with its competition. One of the reasons was that Columbia was able now to attract some of the top talent, like Major Bowes and his amateur hour.
All right. Good evening, friends. We start the dizzy spin of the Wheel of Fortune. Around she goes, and where she stops, nobody knows. Now first, Fred Sandan, K-A-N-D-A-N, North Bergen, New Jersey, popular singer. New work? No, not yet. Right into market. Have you studied music? No, I haven't studied. What would you like to sing? I'd like to sing I'm afraid you're not quite ready yet either. Pretty young, but just study a little bit.
Major Bowes was a part of a variety of network programming that was impressive in these years. Besides music, drama, and the daytime serials, which we'll look at in other segments of this broadcast, its range was rich and varied. There were quiz shows like Phil Baker's Take It or Leave It, poetry readings with Tony Wands, comedians like Joe Wanna-Buy-a-Duck Penner, Judy Canova, Joey Brown, Eddie Cantor, even Fred Allen before he went over to NBC. Dr. Alan Defoe, the man who delivered the Dion quintuplets, gave advice on child health in a CBS radio series. There was even a series on mouth care. All this besides programs on religion and travel. The Voice of Experience, a program of advice to the troubled, and the rules of etiquette from the doyenne of the social graces, Emily Post. The more serious side of life in the 1930s, in the depths of the Depression, was not forgotten. A controversial priest from Detroit named Father Coughlin preached at the CBS radio audience, and a homespun comedian named Will Rogers kidded it. Both were fond of poking holes in Roosevelt's New Deal policies.
Counting all the families of American citizens, there are together 25 million men, women, and children in this nation after 4 years of the New Deal who are forced to eat the black bread of relief. Relief? Relief that has failed to relief. Although the federal government in these 4 years has spent $10 billion to correct unemployment, and although counties, states, towns, and hamlets have spent $3 billion on the same project to relieve a situation that grew out of the sins of modern capitalism, and as a result of it all, we have accumulated more upon relief. We have accumulated approximately $50 billion of debt, of money poured down the rat hole of civilization, and God knows if we will ever break that immorality down in the minds of those of us who have some sanity left.
This $5 billion that they're starting in to spend, we all know that that's too much money. It's too much money to take out and throw away or give away or whatever to do with it. We know that. We all know that. But until we refuse to take some of it and it comes our way, we ain't got much right to holler. Where's the money coming from we're spending? Well, I don't know, but just offhand, I'd say it's coming from those that have got it, you know. No matter what we pay, I don't care whether we pay high taxes, low taxes, medium taxes, or no tax, anything. The yell is always the same, 100%, you know what I mean? We just yell 100%. Of course, we know our government is costing us more than it's worth, but do you know of any other cheaper government that's running around now? I mean, do you? I mean, if you do, I mean, they'll sell you a ticket there anytime. Now you can try Russia. I was over there.
A large number of women's broadcasts filled the network's daytime hours. 2 of them were news broadcasts, but with a twist. Kate Smith, an early superstar on the CBS network, and her longtime broadcast associate, Ted Collins, combined his news with her commentary.
It's high noon in New York and time for Kate Smith.
Hello, everybody. The people of the United States preferred to take D-Day seriously and prayerfully. There was no confetti, no wild demonstrations. Instead, thousands of Americans responded to the good news in a much finer and better way. Throughout the country, they trooped to blood donor stations and war bond booths. War bond sales increased. Payroll offices of factories were swamped with bond buyers. Some cities started their 5th war loan drive early and have already sold their quotas. Yes, Americans are rallying behind our gallant armies of liberation storming Fortress Europe. But don't forget for one moment that the war is far from won. So here on the home front this noon, let's renew our determination to do everything we can to speed the day of victory for our fighting men. And now, Ted, what's new?
The Allied Army of Liberation is...
The other newscast was equally unusual. Wendy Warren and the News combined news headlines with a soap opera, and it ran on the network for 11 years.
Hello, folks. This is Wendy Warren with news reports from the women's world. But first, here's Douglas Edwards with the latest headlines.
The China War is flaming again today.
Douglas Edwards would then report the news, and Wendy, played by actress Florence Freeman, would give several fashion tips and then make the transition into her complicated life story.
Off the air. No visitors, no phone calls. Well, I'm off to the office, Bill. See you tomorrow.
Bye, Wendy. Wendy is worried. Her manner is abstracted, her eyes clouded and perplexed.
Still no word from Anton. I was so sure I'd...
Domestic comedy, the situation comedy or sitcom, developed early on the network. Easy Aces, later called Mr. Ace and Jane, was one of the successful early ones. Goodman Ace, one of the most talented and highest-paid writers on radio, was master of the deadpan, subtle school of comedy writing. He wrote the broadcast, which starred himself and his wife, Jane, who was famous for her malapropisms.
When Jane and I think of buying something expensive, we talk it over. For instance, when we thought of buying a used car, we found it wasn't what it was cracked up to be.
We thought of buying a used car, but it wasn't what it was jacked up to be.
Even when Jane goes to buy lingerie, I make various suggestions.
Even when I go to buy lingerie, he's very suggestive.
One of us never does anything without letting the other one know.
One of us never does anything without letting me know.
The other night, after a hard day at the advertising agency where I work, I was sitting around reading the paper, and Jane was going over her shopping list for the next day.
Now, let me see if I've got everything down that I want to buy tomorrow. Toothbrush, soap, cleansing cream, mink coat, and lipstick. Anything you need, dear?
I like listening to radio. I used to like to listen, and I think everybody liked to listen to radio because it gave them a chance to see it in their mind's eye. There's a 1-inch screen up there that everybody saw Fibber McGee and Molly's closet empty out, and heard it to the sound effects, you see. And I think, and for instance, in a radio show, a girl in a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt can say to a guy in a sweatshirt and a pair of jeans can be together, and they put a record on of soft music, and he can say to her, "You're the prettiest girl at this dance," and that only costs nothing. On television, they've been running into thousands of dollars with Japanese lanterns you got to hang and all that stuff. You know, they make a big production out of them.
After the war, CBS began producing its own situation comedies. Comedies such as
My Friend Irma,
starring Marie Wilson and Our Miss Brooks with Eve Arden and Gail Gordon.
Jane, the telephone's ringing. Jane, the telephone's ringing. Aren't you going to answer it? I don't know if it's for me. Well, take a chance. Take a chance. It's not your nickel. Hello? Hello? Yes, she's here. Jane, it's for me. Irma? You know, if Marconi knew that you were going to use the telephone, he never would have invented it. Oh, Jane, I'm surprised at you. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, not Marconi. You see, I'm beginning to think like you. Everybody knows that Marconi invented spaghetti.
On Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden.
That last page, Miss Brooks.
But, Mr. Conklin, I wouldn't suggest
Give it here. To sum up, I would like to read what I have written in this last paragraph, to wit. Having observed Mr. Stone's educational methods, I am convinced that his outstanding talent is his ability to eat bananas while hanging by his tail. Believe me, Mr. Stone, these sentiments are dictated by a eat bananas while hanging by his tail!
The man has obviously taken leave of his senses.
But, sir, if you let me...
And when they return, this matter will be thoroughly investigated. Good day, Miss Brooks.
Miss Brooks, this speech. This isn't the speech I wrote.
I know it now, Mr. Conklin, but I didn't.
I hold you responsible for this entire fiasco. Believe me, Miss Brooks, you have no idea how severe your punishment is going to be.
Oh, yes, I have, Mr. Conklin.
Miss Brooks, where are you going?
Out to get some bananas. There's nothing like hanging by your tail from a flagpole to whip up an appetite.
As the 1950s dawned, the Columbia Broadcasting System had become the #1 radio network. And this was due mainly to its array of stars and other talent. William Paley had come back from the war, and in the succeeding years, signed some of the biggest stars in radio entertainment to CBS contracts. His aggressive pursuit of these entertainers was called by some Paley's talent raids. They resulted in a lineup of talent, some new, some long established, that was hard to beat. It included Bing Crosby, Jack Benny, Amos and Andy, Red Skelton, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, Lum and Abner, Ozzie and Harriet, Lucille Ball, Gary Moore, Burns and Allen, Arthur Godfrey and Art Linkletter. Linkletter reigned on daytime radio for 23 years. Listen now to some excerpts from those golden years. Imagine that it's a Sunday night then, after a good weekend. You're in your favorite easy chair. Your head is back, resting comfortably, and your eyes are closed, and you're listening.
Now, Clip, you there can help me, I'll mow you down.
From Hollywood, it's the new Edgar Bergen Hour with Charlie McCarthy. It's Sunday night, and time again transcribed for Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy with Mortimer Stewart, Effie Clinker, Ray Noble, and yours truly, John Houston. Ladies and gentlemen, judging by the volume of mail, this is the part of the show many of you have been waiting for, our advice to the lovelorn department. And here tonight to help us is our own expert on romance. Here she is, the next to the last of the Red Hot Mamas, Miss Effie Clinker. All right, Miss Clinker, carry on.
I'd love to if you're game. Oh, that Houston sends me. Of course, I don't have far to go. Yippee!
All right, yes. Flirting with John Houston, why, you don't even know him. Would you actually go out with a strange man?
Is there any other kind?
Well, I must say, you're quite a lover.
Oh, yes, I must say so.
Yes. Do men run after your kisses?
They can barely crawl after they are.
You've never been married, though, have you?
No, I never have, no. I came awfully close to one fella, but I couldn't get along with his family.
Oh, I see. Then you almost married?
Yes.
But you couldn't get along with his family.
Well, that's what I said.
Yes, I know.
Yes. What are you, an echo?
No. Well, it's rather sad.
Yes, it was.
When those things happen, it is sad.
Oh, it broke me up.
Yes. What was it? His father that objected?
No, not his father so much.
His mother?
No, I couldn't get along with her.
I see. Well, who was it?
It was his wife.
His wife, I see. Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy.
In a little while, you will be married to Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie, there comes a time in everyone's life when he must learn about certain things.
Yes? Well, what do you want to know, Bergen?
Well, I mean, what I'm trying to tell you, Charlie, is that
what I'm trying to explain to you, I don't know what you're trying to...
Charlie!
Oh, Marilyn Monroe! You look beautiful.
I'm wearing my wedding dress.
Yeah.
Something borrowed.
Yeah, you didn't borrow enough.
We'll be so happy. I can see it now.
Yeah.
You and I by the fireplace, and the kettle whistling.
Oh, who can blame it?
Charlie.
Marilyn, my dear, we were made for each other.
Kiss me, Charlie, just to make sure.
Yes, gladly, all right. Playing our song.
From Hollywood, the Red Skelton program.
Hey, buddy, yeah.
Well, Willie Lump Lump. Yeah? Hey, Willie, what are you doing here?
Now, let's not get nosy, Bob.
Well, what are you doing in a doctor's office? Are you ill?
No, I come in here to wait for a bus. I came in for a few shots. That's what I'm in for.
Well, what kind of shots?
Oh, I'm not choosy, you know. I even brought my shot glass with me.
Willie, why don't you go home and sleep it off?
What, and botch up a whole day's work? Look, I don't know why I even talk to you. Every time I see you, you get to look worse and worse. You just don't look like... I've had a lot of queer DTs in my day, but you just don't look.
Welcome to the Bing Crosby Show.
Now, Ken, if you'll excuse me for a moment, I'd like to present a very unusual and special guest. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Bob Hope.
Before we go any further, pal, I want you to know that I waited at home all day yesterday for you to drop by with my Christmas present. You're going to come up with something, aren't you?
I was about to ask you the same thing.
Now, what have you got for me, Scrooge?
That's a nice thing to say. I want you to know I put a lot of thought into this gift, and I think it's something that you'll cherish forever.
Oh, wonderful. Let's see if I can guess what it is.
Well, it's round, and it has a stone right in the center of it. A ring. It's a peach.
Well, isn't that nice? I'm surprised you could spare the fuzz.
Now, never...
In case anyone cares, I'm Dorothy L'Amour. Do you characters mind if I squeeze in here?
Just move in. I'll do the squeezing.
Down, Balto, down. Now, duck, Ruddy Face. The shrimp boats are coming.
Hey, I don't have to worry. They're looking for live bait.
If you two will stop squabbling, I'll give you your Christmas present.
Gee, what did you bring us?
I knitted sweaters for both of you. Here.
Well, where did you learn to knit? This is only one sweater with 4 sleeves.
Well, you're always together. Put it on and shut up.
I hope it has a V-neck. I'm in television.
This is really very thoughtful, very sweet of you, Dottie. And, Bob, I think the fact that Dottie has brought us a gift poses a little problem.
What problem?
Well, come on, give Dottie her gift.
Oh, yes, I thought you had Dottie's present,
No,
thing.
you've got it.
I have? Now, where did I put that?
Oh, come on, quit stalling. You didn't get anything for me for Christmas, did you?
Not true. Go on, Bob. There's only one thing to do.
Oh, all right, all right. Here, Dottie, Merry Christmas.
Oh, isn't that sweet? A peach with a bite out of it.
CBS Radio Network presents Jack Benny.
Now, let's see. Well, boss, I've got all the luggage in the car. Sure, come on, let's go. Maybe we got a little water in the gasoline.
I'd fill up if we had a little gasoline in the water.
Never mind. Try the motor again, will you?
Yes, sir.
Hey, the motor sounds as though it's going from bad to worse.
Sounds like it's going from here to eternity.
Rochester, don't be funny. Try it once more.
Okay.
The motor's not even catching. Maybe the battery's dead.
Can't be that, Mr. Billy. I put a new battery in yesterday.
A new battery? How much does it cost?
Nothing. I got it out of your flashlight.
Well, try it once more. There you are, Rochester. The motor's going. Back the car out of the garage.
Wait till that crowd gets out of the way.
All right, folks, break it up. Break it up. Beat it. Why do they always gather when we try to start the car? You can go, Rochester. They've gone now.
Wednesday night, Arthur Godfrey and His Friends, which was always one of the top-rated shows, either 1, 2, or 3. And then Talent Scouts was often number 1. That was half an hour Monday night. And then there was a Best of Arthur Godfrey, which was just a collection of stuff taken from, edited out of the week on half an hour on Saturdays. And nobody could have done it who didn't take it as easily as he did.
Now, in order to understand this career, you have to realize that the last thing I ever had on my mind was stardom when I started out. It never occurred to me that I would be a star ever, any time. I just wanted to be the man who did the best job of doing whatever he was assigned to do. Whether it was describing a parade or a football game or announcing for a program or whatever it was in the beginning. And they gave me the early morning chore of playing the records and telling the time. And it was just that I tried to make it entertaining.
He invented a whole style of radio, and people don't realize how important he was. And some of the people who are still popular owe their style to Godfrey. He invented Jack Parr, who's gone. He invented probably Dave Garroway. He invented Johnny Carson, in a sense.
It occurred to me that the only way you could achieve any longevity in our business was to grow in stature, to grow in interest. And so I tried to learn many different things and to learn all about a lot of different things so that I could speak with some sort of authority about them, or at least some familiarity with them, and keep my interests going and growing, and therefore perhaps I would intrigue some people to stay with me. Then, of course, the big thing that I depended upon always was integrity, because I was positive that the only way in the world a man could sell is to sell himself first. And so I decided that I could be your companion, your confidant, the man upon whom you could, in whom you could place some trust.
He also started this huge trend that no one ever considered possible before of being disrespectful of advertisers.
Says here, Arthur, please announce that there will be a midnight show tonight of the women. And how about the women treating the men to this show? It says, talking about style, wait till you see that gorgeous $250 nightgown that is part of the Technicolor fashion show in the new picture, The Women. Fancy that, paying $250 for a nightie.
Godfrey was a real guy. He was talking to people, not performing in front of them.
What made old-time radio unique by today's standards was that much of it was live entertainment. Generally, the only place today where radio is still live is in the news and information area. And we asked CBS News correspondents Douglas Edwards and Charles Osgood to reflect on the two modes, live and recorded.
Doug, I guess the news area in both radio and television today is one of the last bastions of liveness anyway, isn't it?
Exactly, it is, and it's so refreshing, really, to do most of a news broadcast entirely live. Of course, tape is a marvelous adjunct today. It's one of our tools, and it works beautifully, but it, as you know, Charlie, has not always been so. For instance, in my early days at CBS, 1942 forward, we had no recordings, no tape. Everything was live, switches to all kinds of places.
So when you called in a piece from London, London came up live?
London was there, and if London was not there, or if the signal in the pre-testing period was not up to standard, I would fill London's part in New York, or we'd switch somewhere else. We usually had, for overseas pickup news programs, alternate spots to go to. Quite often, we would go to a pickup scheduled from Moscow. Now, in the talk-up from the correspondent in Moscow, we would ascertain whether their clock was working the same way the old clock on the studio wall in New York was. Most times it was not. Moscow would be either 5 seconds, 6 seconds fast or slow, or 20 seconds off, which meant in order to switch to them, we had to calculate the error in their clock in order to switch into the correspondent over there for his report. I must explain one other thing, that the correspondent in Moscow could not hear us from either direction. He went live on a time basis.
That sounds like a mistake waiting to happen. I don't know. I guess we've all made fluffs, and I personally, Doug, and I'm sure that over the years you must have made one or two.
Oh, heavens, yes. For one memorable one for me was on VE night over in London. Ed Murrow and I were in the BBC studios, and he did his piece and then switched over. And Doug, what have you been doing today? And I said, been broadcasting, Ed. But then I began my piece by, yes, indeed, it is VE Day in London. And at which point, a great many people are going to find this a little hard to understand. Edward R. Murrow just dissolved in laughter and disappeared under the table for a moment or two, and I had to finish the broadcast.
Yeah. Doug, that must have been a shade disconcerting. But you must be one of the few people in the whole world who can say that he caused the great Edward R. Murrow to drop under the table.
Entertainment, one of the great contributors to the building of CBS Radio. And in many ways, a broad base for the outpouring of entertainment to come later on television. Next, we'll look at sports on CBS Radio.
You are listening to CBS Radio at 50, an autobiography in sound. And now, Bill Schallert for General Electric.
One of the things that makes a great city great is its heritage, its people, places, and events. And Chicago, with its colorful 140-year history, certainly qualifies as a great city. It was Chicago that hosted one of the most famous sporting events in history, an event that General Electric had a hand in. The place was Soldiers Field Stadium, September 22nd, 1927. This was the night of the Dempsey-Tunney fight and the disputed long count. 150,000 people, then the largest sports crowd ever, turned out to see Gene Tunney defeat Jack Dempsey for the heavyweight championship of the world. Because the fight was at night, more people who worked during the day could attend. So Soldiers Field had to expand to accommodate almost twice its normal capacity. People were either climbing fences or perched on them to see the fight. And it would have been difficult not to see it, because GE had filled the entire stadium with light. Enough light to equal 300 full moons. All of it specially rigged and installed for the historic bout. That was quite an achievement in its time. The newspapers called it a gigantic spectacle. Others talked of the complete chaos in the stands that could have occurred if it hadn't been for the lights. People who saw the fight described it as having the clarity of day. We've come a long way from what was once thought unusual. Today, there's hardly a place you can go without finding some sort of baseball, football, or basketball game being played under GE lights. And there's ice skating, bowling, rodeos, track meets, sporting events of all kinds. GE has made a lot of progress adding to the hours of enjoyment in a day by adding hours of enjoyment to the night. Progress for people from General Electric.